The dust of ages. The road was not built by any emperor or engineer. It was simply there, a scar of purpose etched into the face of the world. It was a winding, serpentine ribbon of pale, pulverized stone that caught the waning spectrum of the sun, now sinking rapidly toward the western rim of the world. Kalen ran a calloused thumb over the grit accumulating on his worn leather boot. The dust of ages, that's what the ancients called it. It wasn't just pulverized rock, it was the mingled remains of countless journeys, the fine residue of joy and despair, of steps taken and journeys abandoned. It settled, silent and indifferent, on everything: the broad, flat stones of the path, the resilient leather of Kalen's pack, and the fine, almost invisible hairs of his beard. He walked beneath the fading light, that liminal, bittersweet hour when the world seemed to hold its breath. The air grew cool, carrying the scent of pine and high-altitude rock, mingled with the faint, metallic tang of an approaching storm. For Kalen, this wasn't a time for rest, it was a time of heightened awareness. The fading light wasn't a signal to stop, it was merely a temporary phase, a challenge to his vision. He knew, with a certainty that had become the bedrock of his existence, that he must continue moving. To pause was to risk being enveloped by the deep, seductive lethargy of the past, to be frozen in the accumulating dust. His entire life had become a singular, focused act of locomotion. He was one of the seekers, those who believed the meaning of life wasn't a static truth to be found in a book or beneath a relic, but a kinetic state achieved only through constant forward motion. Their mantra, passed down from the earliest travelers, was simple: we chase the dawn that breaks beyond the night. This dawn was not just the rising sun, it was revelation, understanding, the absolute clarity of purpose. But it was always beyond the night, the inevitable periods of doubt, struggle, and the oppressive darkness of the unknown. Kalen remembered his village, nestled in a sheltered valley where the concept of a journey was merely the daily commute to the fields. They lived by seasons, by cycles, comfortable in the predictable repetition. He had left, driven by a restlessness that his neighbors mistook for madness. The dawn is here, Kalen, his father had reasoned, pointing to the familiar sun cresting the eastern hills. But Kalen knew that was just a dawn. He sought the dawn, the one that defined the end of the eternal night of unknowing. And so, he had taken the first step onto this ancient, unforgiving track. He thought of Alara, a fellow seeker he had traveled with for a brief, intense stretch years ago. She was fierce and pragmatic, constantly questioning the philosophical underpinnings of their movement. "Why must we explore alone, Kalen?" she'd asked one crisp morning. "Couldn't the burden be lighter shared?" He hadn't had an answer then, only the visceral understanding that the deepest confrontations, the wrestling with one's own fear and failure, could not be witnessed, let alone shared. And walk the path we must explore alone was not a mandate for isolation. It was an acknowledgement of ultimate, individual responsibility. Each person's understanding, their dawn, was inherently unique, filtered through their own experience, their own burdens. The silent witness, the immediate landscape began to shift dramatically. The gentle foothills gave way to sheer, imposing granite. Above him, piercing the deepening indigo of the twilight sky, were the mountain peaks, the dragon's teeth as the local folklore named them. They did not soar, they stabbed. Their jagged silhouettes were impossibly sharp against the faint, shimmering glow of the first stars. They ascended into the blue like silent sentinels, vast and indifferent. Kalen halted, throwing his head back to gaze at them. They had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the geological spasms of the world, and the countless insignificant passages of beings like himself. They were a silent witness to the passing years, measuring human striving against the vast, almost mocking scale of geological time. His own life, his decades of relentless travel, was less than a blink to them. Yet this very realization was comforting. His struggles were small, but his act of persistent movement was a tiny, defiant echo against their immensity. It gave his singular journey a kind of quiet, fleeting dignity. The trail here was steeper, a relentless series of switchbacks carved into the mountain flank. Kalen could feel the burn in his thighs, the steady rhythmic ache that was as familiar as the sound of his own heart. He adopted the traveler's pace, slow, steady and unwavering, counting his breaths and steps. Each forward step reveals a vista new, a literal truth that became a metaphor for his entire quest. As he gained altitude, the valley floor spread out beneath him, a tapestry of deepening shadows and scattered pinpricks of light, the villages he had left behind, the sedentary world of cycles and seasons. He saw not regret but distance. The past was now a manageable landscape, observed from a superior height. This constant elevation, both physical and metaphorical, was the ultimate antidote. The initial weeks of his journey had been plagued by doubt. Am I wasting my life? Is this just an escape? What if there is no dawn? But the steady application of will, the sheer physical and mental labor of moving forward, had slowly eroded those internal saboteurs. Dispelling doubts and calming all the fears was not a sudden act of grace, but the inevitable consequence of forward motion. Fear, he learned, thrives in inertia, in the dark, stagnant pools of contemplation. Action, the constant, deliberate placement of one foot in front of the other, drained those pools dry. He realized that the answers he sought weren't at the journey's end, but in the act of the journey itself. The weight of what we leave behind. Kalen reached a small, sheltered ledge just as the moon, a slender crescent, emerged from behind the highest peak. He set down his pack, the weight instantly replaced by a phantom ache in his shoulders. It was a paradox of the journey. Though he had shed almost everything over the years, the concept of burdens that we learned to shed was an ongoing, active process. The physical pack contained only the bare essentials: a blanket, some dried rations, a small, meticulously maintained journal. The real weight, however, was the mental and emotional baggage. He thought of the ambition he had once carried, the desire for fame, for recognition, that he had been the first to find the ultimate truth. He had shed that heavy expectation years ago, realizing that the quest for recognition was an anchor, mooring him to the opinions of others. He recalled the complex tapestry of relationships he had severed, not out of malice but necessity. The need to belong, to be understood by others, was a crushing load. He had realized that seeking external validation made his journey contingent upon the presence of others. True forward motion demanded internal validation, a singular, internal compass. This was the heavy weight of what we leave behind. Not just objects and people, but potential alternate lives. The life of comfort, the life of a family man, the life of a scholar. Each choice to walk the path was a choice to not walk 100 others. And the weight of these unchosen paths could be crippling, a phantom pressure on the chest. But shedding them was liberation. It allowed the spirit to become light enough to float, to be carried forward by the wind of its own intention. He opened his journal and dipped his pen in the small vial of ink, a ritual he performed every night, regardless of exhaustion. Writing was not a record of where he had been, but who he was becoming. The constant motion was not merely physical. It was an internal centrifuge, spinning out the non-essential, refining the core of his being. The movement broke down old patterns of thought, shattered preconceived notions, and forced a moment-to-moment confrontation with reality. By constant motion are our spirits fed, nourished by the sheer, unadulterated reality of the present. There was no time for regret or anxiety. There was only the next step, the next breath, the next word in the journal. This relentless focus was a quest for meaning that we seek to find. It was the difference between searching for meaning and creating it. He wasn't looking for a scroll that contained the answer. He was using the process of the journey, the hunger, the cold, the moments of breathtaking beauty, to forge meaning out of raw experience. The meaning was the process itself. The everlasting guide. Kalen closed the journal. The moon was higher now, illuminating the path ahead with a cold, clear light. The air was sharp and the distant, unseen peaks seemed to hum with a latent, profound energy. He stood up, hoisting the now familiar, blessedly light pack onto his back. He knew, intimately, the common misconception about the seekers. Outsiders believed their goal was a specific, tangible place, a golden city, a hidden temple, a singularity of truth. They were wrong. The ultimate irony, the great cosmic joke of the journey, was this: the journey's end is only a new start. The moment the final destination is reached, the moment the anticipated answer is revealed, the true work begins. Truth is not an achievement, it is a responsibility. The destination is merely the place from which one must choose a new direction, a new path of application and integration. The concept of stopping was an illusion. The nature of existence was continuous flow. He looked out towards the west, where the sun had vanished. He wasn't looking for a landmark, he was looking for the horizon. It was an abstract, unattainable line, perpetually receding. He thought of that final metaphor, a distant shore where setting suns reside. This shore wasn't death or retirement. It was the ultimate, unattainable ideal, the perfect synthesis of knowledge and experience. And because it was an ideal, it guaranteed the journey could never truly conclude. It ensured eternal purpose. Kalen reached into the breast pocket of his shirt, touching the faint, leathery outline of his own chest. The only map he truly needed was the rhythm beneath his fingers. The map is etched upon the beating heart, not in ink on parchment. It wasn't a blueprint of geography but a code of values: resilience, patience, curiosity, and the unwavering commitment to forward momentum. Every beat was a direction, every ache a coordinate. The heart was the source of his will, his passion, his fear, and ultimately his liberation. And guiding this internal cartography was the singular, immutable force that had driven him from his comfortable valley years ago, where purpose is the everlasting guide. Purpose was not a finding, it was a commitment. It wasn't the goal, it was the how of the journey. To walk, to observe, to shed, to endure, this was the meaning. The path had become the destination, and the constant forward step was his final, profound purpose. He adjusted his stride, leaning slightly into the incline. The night was cold, but the internal fire of his conviction burned bright. He walked on, one solitary figure against the vast, silent canvas of the world, chasing the eternal, receding dawn. The journey, like the universe itself, was truly endless. Endless journey, the highway calls beneath the sun, a line unspooling, never done. The engine hums a steady beat, with asphalt burning neath our feet. No final stop is marked ahead, just open space where paths are spread. The destination shifts and fades through mountain passes, wooded glades. We carry maps we seldom check, a thirst for what's beyond the neck of every curve, a wild desire to feel the wind and chase the fire. The miles collect, a quiet score, each sunset bringing something more. We seek the self in distance vast, a future built upon the past. The weary heart finds solace sweet, in rhythmic motion, quick and fleet. This wandering spirit can't be bound, while new horizons can be found. We pause for rest beneath the stars, to mend the soul and heal the scars. Then rise to greet the dawning light, and push on through the day and night.